tell me through your mind state at the time. I'm going to go to whistleblower avenues.
All that existed, starting with
Where did you
NSA
start
itself.
first?
The number 3 that I reported to.
That
who
was your
actually was
boss?
my hiring manager.
Your hiring manager.
She was the signals intelligence director at the time.
And what was her reaction to your disclosures?
She didn't want to hear about it.
And then what did you do?
Well, I could have just sort of, okay, no, nothing's going to happen. You know, I can just sit back and ride out the rest of my time at NSA, get a government pension, and ride off into the sunset. Right? Even after 9/11.
And what year was this exactly?
This was the fall of 2001.
This is the fall of 2001.
Fall of 2001. First day on the job was 9/11.
Your first day at work
Yes.
was 9/11?
Yeah. After I went through all the processing and everything else, the first day reporting to my new duty station was literally dark 30. It was actually 0500 in the morning, Zulu time, right?
Wow.
It was
Wow.
0500,
You can't make
24-hour
this up.
clock
Truth is
military
stranger
time.
than fiction.
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot of truth here that it may sound and probably is stranger than fiction. It'd be difficult to write the Hollywood script.
You can't. Yeah, they would laugh at Netflix if you wrote this down.
I'm in a meeting and the two towers are hit, and then the Pentagon, shortly thereafter, it's like, I remember sitting. It was in the Legislative Affairs office. I remember standing up. So my chair was up against the door that goes into the outer hall. The director of the Signals Intelligence Directorate was actually giving a briefing to a TAG team. It's a technical advisory group for the SISI, the Senate Select Committee. They really had concerns about what the country, what was national security going to receive for all this money that's being spent on Trailblazer. And NSA was in fact challenged to explain what would the country receive for all that money. So once again, there was this meeting that was set up. Well, I remember when the executive assistant came in and said the second tower had been hit, I stood up and said, America's under attack. Mm-hmm. The next 4 months are a blur for me.
A blur.
Until I was with family in New Orleans celebrating Mardi Gras. That was the first time I felt somewhat normal again as a human being.
What was that 4 months like for you? Just working heads down?
Unbelievably compressed.
Just lots of work.
Staggering amounts, tasking. You're trying to figure out, because you knew this was more, it was not just an everyday crisis. This was going to be a multi-year crisis.
What
and of
did you
course,
do?
all kinds of pronouncements were made by Bush and then Cheney going to the dark side, Cofer Black saying we're going to take the gloves off.
What did you do for the NSA?
I was hired in, literally my title originally, I had multiple positions, was senior change leader. So I'm in the operations side of NSA. This is the active side. This is the side of NSA that goes out, collects signals, makes sense of them.
So what were your duties?
My duties was that I actually had a small leadership and communications team that reported directly to the signals intelligence director. So we were responsible for basically setting up communication systems to keep everybody informed. We were advising as well in terms of how to respond to what happened on 9/11. We were having to deal with questions that were already starting to come from Congress. We were also, hey, what else is there in the fight? What else can we put into the fight to deal with terrorism? We didn't know. Remember, right after 9/11, they didn't know if there was other cells that were in operation. People forget. I mean, it's hard for me now. As you were going back, this is it's 25th anniversaries next year. It's hard to believe.
So those 4 months were a blur for you. You go to your supervisor. She shrugs her shoulders. And then
within just days of 9/11. The reason, this is critical. 9/11 was a failure to keep people out of harm's way. 9/11 was a failure, systemic failure to protect the nation. But the system had been blinking red for years. Even George Tenet sent out a memo 3 years earlier saying the system is blinking red. There was all kinds of indications, but this is post-Cold War. NSA was still trying to sort out like who's the next threat, who's the enemy. This was clearly a non-state actor, transnational, which I was very familiar with because I had worked in a previous assignment as a commissioned officer in the Navy down at the Pentagon in the Alert Center, the National Military Joint Intelligence Center, sitting on the terrorism desk in 1993 when they tried to drop the World Trade Center towers the first time. 6 people died. I remember we were on the desk. It was a small team. we're in the alert center. We were sending out reports based on very advanced analysis. These they mean business. Al-Qaeda and company means business. They're not going to rest. They're going to come back, and they want to make it spectacular. We warned. I remember they're going to come back. We even made reference to airplanes. They'll use everything possible. So I'm sitting there literally on shift, and the J2, who was one of the general, he's a general, but he was considered the chief military intelligence officer. He reported directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He comes down because he's been reading the reports that we're sending out from the terrorism desk. He's sitting there talking to the senior duty officer. He says, "Yeah, I'm reading all your reports." Shaking his head at the same time. He says, "Who cares about some raghead spouting off fatwas in the desert?"
What year was that?
1993.
So about 8 years before 9/11.
This is after they tried to drop the Trade Center towers the first time.
Imagine if you had that on video. Imagine if you had that on video.
You can imagine what I was thinking on 9/11 when everything unfolded.
You were feeling what Jeffrey Y. Gann described as kind of righteous indignation. Would you characterize that?
That's a fair statement.
Righteous indignation.
But see, the warnings, the frustration, you probably even see it in my body right now. I was classically trained as an intelligence analyst. I was a crypto-linguist in the Air Force for a number of years. I flew on reconnaissance platforms like the RC-135. I was a mission crew supervisor on an electronic warfare mission called Compass Call. That was on an EC-130H. It was actually, when I came back from overseas in England, I was stationed in Arizona at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. We were classically trained. We had extraordinary powers during the Cold War in terms of collection of intelligence and making sense of it. We were listening in on any number of countries and across any number of networks and picking up signals from all kinds of different devices. Push-to-talk radios, you name it, right? Across the the electromagnetic spectrum, high-end radars, all that. An amazing system that was set up in those decades after World War II. Why? We would never be surprised again, a la 7 December 1941 with the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. We will never again experience a surprise electronically.
This is James O'Keefe. You know me for exposing the truth and holding the corrupt elite responsible and accountable. However, today I want to tell you about protecting your own freedom, your finances. Before you buy any gold or silver, hear this. We're going through one of the biggest financial shifts of our lifetime. De-dollarization. Nations like China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia are pulling away from the US dollar. And that threatens your savings and retirement security. Legendary investor Ray Dalio warns skyrocketing debt, relentless money printing, and a weakening dollar are all part of a dangerous cycle that could impact you. That's why more Americans are turning to real assets like physical gold and silver. Gold just surged past $3,700 per ounce, and momentum is building. I've partnered with veteran-owned American Independence Gold to help you take action. Open a qualifying account today and get up to $10,000 in bonus gold and our free gold protection guide. And here's the best part. A portion of every sale supports Tunnel to Towers and wounded warriors. Freedom isn't given, it's secured. This is James O'Keefe. As always, this is not financial advice. Always check with your licensed financial advisor before you invest.
What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale.